Good morning. I'm here with Oliver GOTTSCHALG of GOTTSCHALG Analytics, who provides private equity track record analytics services, which sounds a mouthful, and it probably is, and it sounds complicated. So, Oliver, what is it exactly you provide, and do you have any sort of examples to illustrate your services?
Certainly. So we're a benchmarking service provider, but importantly, we don't only benchmark returns as in the how much of performance, but we're getting at the how. So the way this works is that we take in data from a private equity track record, typically from a data room of a fund manager, run a standardized set of 5 key indicators to play back what I like to call chromosomes of the value creation DNA of the GP. Now, how does this work? Let's look at some examples. For instance, on the return element, it's important to understand whether the fund manager is good because of what they're doing, is positioning in a certain type of deal, or good at what they're doing. And the normal benchmarking exercise doesn't allow you to differentiate between those two factors. It's just a question of whether or not you are top quartile. I like to think not about top quartile, but about actually being best in class. And we measure just objectively, first identifying a comp set, a peer group for every fund, comprised of other private equity funds who've actually done similar things. Similarity defined by the nature of the investee companies. Then we ask the question, how does that fund manager compare against the comp set, that set of relevant peers that we identify? And then we can learn not only how much their positioning has helped or hurt performance, but also how they're able to outperform that reference group. Now, you may ask yourself why you worry. And my answer on everything we do, why you should worry, is always that I find empirical evidence for the performance relevance of those indicators. Basically, if you're an LP, you'll look at these factors to look for high-performing funds. You're more likely than otherwise to find yourself with an outperforming portfolio.
Your clients are mainly GPs who want to impress LPs.
That is true by and large. And it was an interesting question that I asked myself when we started the business 12 years ago. Who's going to be a typical client of ours? Yes. Is it going to be the ones who are in desperate need of another data point to somehow still raise their fund? Or is it the strong performers who come to us to document their strength? Now, 12 years out, we can actually say we're very proud that we're privileged to work for the better part of the asset class. Empirically, our clients are outperforming the average private equity firm from a return standpoint, and they're also growing twice as rapidly as private equity overall, which makes us very proud. Of course, we don't imply any causality. They're not great because they're working with us, but they just choose to work with us because we document what's behind their strength and excellence.
And in the 12 years you've been doing this, how has the market environment changed and how have your services adopted to reflect that?
Well, at the core, they're actually very, very stable. So I listened to the good advice I got early on that it takes much, much longer for the industry to adopt and endorse the type of metrics I try to innovate than for me to come up with the next set of metrics. However, of course, we've been learning. We've been refining at the edges, largely based on client input. But importantly, the last couple of years, we've added a lot around the topic of risk, which was always a core part of what we were doing. But of course, it's now front and center of every fund manager to demonstrate that they're actually good at mitigating risk, particularly protecting portfolios during the downturn. So we added additional metrics to specifically highlight those two attributes.
So basically your services help the fund manager to communicate with the investors.
Absolutely.
How does that exactly apply itself to private equity firms?
Well, the typical engagement is initially with an introspective phase. So we work with the fund managers with their data in confidence for their eyes only, because I need to demonstrate basically the degree to which they recognize themselves on the data. What makes me proud every time is when I hear a comment as I go through the first presentation by somebody in the firm that says, oh, wow, we always knew about this. We couldn't quite communicate on it. We said it, but now we have a data point to prove it. This is the very essence of what we're doing. Now, after the introspective phase, obviously, we go through the reflection with the client, with the GP, on how, in what form, and what part of it needs to be communicated to the LP, so the LP is getting the message, substantiating the key aspects that the GP wants to communicate on their track record. And then very often these projects are centered around a specific fundraise, and then we basically go to the last project stage where we do all of this over and over again until the fundraise comes to a successful conclusion.
And I would think that you need to have the data. So if the fund manager doesn't have the data, then you can't do your magic. I mean, how does it work concretely and how long does it take for this process?
Yeah, so we're designed to work off of data that we find in every reasonably well-maintained data room. So if the GP is willing to share the data with us, That's not a problem as long as we talk about this GP. It's much more complex, of course, if we talk about benchmarking, because there we are benchmarking with data from the usual commercially available sources. Importantly, we're not benchmarking one client against other clients. First of all, I want to avoid the aforementioned bias that our clients tend to be the better ones, and the natural NDA requirements that every client puts in place that stops me from doing so. But we find that data typically, then play back the results to the fund manager, and they stay in control about whether, when, and what of this is communicated to the LPs.
So apart from these great services, what else are you offering to fund managers or LPs?
Well, we offer related services to LPs who use the same technique to screen the market. But for the fund managers, importantly, we're just in the process of piloting a novel application of the similar math. Because somebody told me at some point that very similar aspects that are relevant for the GP to attract capital are also relevant in the other market that they're in, attracting and convincing good businesses that they're the best owner of the businesses, the best stewards of those businesses going forward. And I asked myself, I put myself in the shoe of the entrepreneur who's possibly dealing with private equity, needs to convince to be of private equity and choosing between different GPs. What does this person want? They want to work with the best. They want to work with somebody with a safe pair of hands, handles risk, and can protect businesses in the downturn. They want to work with somebody where their business is in the strategic core and center of what the GP is doing. They naturally want somebody who's a company builder, not a value extractor. And within the firm, they want to probably work with the best investment managers. Now, I can run math with the same analytical toolkit on exactly those 5 factors and basically allow my GP clients going forward to also demonstrate that they are actually top value creators for a given business that they're pitching for.
That's fascinating. I mean, you must be really in demand with everybody fundraising at the moment.
Well, I've said it frequently at the conference here. I find myself indeed in a market environment where almost everybody out there, large or small, good or bad, who's fundraising has some level of headache. We're selling headache pills for fundraisers. So indeed, it's a thankful market environment, but more importantly, it's also a market environment that allows us to move forward towards our end goal, which is to establish a standard for these metrics as a better vocabulary for LPs and GPs to exchange and actually come more effectively towards the right outcome. What fascinates me in this business is that we actually believe we do something net positive for the asset class. We're helping GPs more effectively to attract the right capital. We're helping LPs to improve the performance of their portfolios and get the right type of GP in there. The only player that will not benefit from our services is the obviously underperforming fund manager. And that's probably a species I don't have much mercy for.
Okay, so tough market environment, but you're profiting. So very good. Thank you, Oliver. Very interesting.
Thank you very much.